is our elder law series called Shannon Says. Shannon is an elder law attorney, certified elder law attorney, CELA for short. Very few people are actually in that category, so we're thrilled to have her today. The CELA certification recognizes that an individual possesses the experience, knowledge, and skills in the practice of elder and special needs law and meets the highest qualifications demanded by the National Elder Law Foundation. There are only a little over 500 CELA certified attorneys in the United States. Shannon is going to be with us in a few minutes. She is with Park Ziegler, Attorneys at Law. So just a couple of housekeeping notes for those of you who may not have been on our Zoom sessions before. We will allow questions. You can put them in the chat box. If you're not sure where that is, you take your cursor, you scroll down to the bottom of your screen. There should be a bunch of icons and just click on the chat. So you can put them in there. If you aren't quite sure how to do that or not comfortable doing that, you can also text me during this Zoom presentation. We will be taking all the questions, compiling them, and then we will be asking them at the end of the presentation. So if you would like to text me, my phone number is 757-645-6364. One other note, if you signed up through a third-party service such as a meetup group, just make sure that you email me directly. You can again do that in the chat, or you can do that through the text, your email address. That way we can add you to all of our other events that we have coming up. We have a lot of events. I think we have about 2 events per month. We're going to be doing more Zoom events as well. So this is a really fun series because people also, not only do you get to learn about elder law, you also get to learn, you also get a chance to win a couple of prizes. So we have some sponsors. Of course, our number one sponsor is Shannon Lehman Pecoraro with Park Ziegler. And one of the things that we will be doing today is giving out a free $350 gift card for Shannon Services, basically to go and get an assessment. So we'll be announcing that at the very end. We also have a couple of other gift cards. One is from Heritage Oaks, a beautiful retirement community in Richmond, and the other is from TimeWise Concierge, Julie Ulrich, who is wonderful. We love working with her. So thank you guys for supporting us in that way. Okay, so I think we are going to go ahead and jump right into it. Shannon, I know you were with us. Shannon Lehman Pecoraro is, of course, again, with Park Ziegler Attorneys, and she is going to be talking about veterans benefits. Shannon, would you like to join us? There she is.
Yes, here I am. So the format of this is a little bit different. Stephanie will tell you every single time I do a presentation. Sometimes I've got PowerPoint, sometimes it's not because it's more free flow. But I have this pamphlet that I give out at different senior advocate events about the veterans pension. And so I wanted to kind of work off of this just because it's something that's tangible to give out on a regular basis. So first things first is, a lot of people understand about the service-connected disability side of the VA benefit arena, right? So if you had some sort of service connection and you got a disability, they will actually give you compensation based off of what your rating is. If that's what you came here to hear about today, I am sorry, I am not your girl. I do have friends that do that. But the field that I work in is very much elderly related. We are starting to look at the needs of long-term care. And so what I focus on is the lesser known benefit, which they call the pension benefit. And trust me, whenever I first started this, it confused me because I was like, well, a pension's like a retirement. Shouldn't that be what it is? No, that is not what this is. And so I think the most important thing for people to realize with this presentation is that this benefit is only available for people that are not actually tied into the service-connected disability side. So if you're on the compensation side, you are not going to be able to double dip into the system. And so you kind of have to pick or choose. They will give you the higher of the two benefits. So like if you're only rated, let's say 20% in the service connected side, well, then it would make better sense to move over to the pension side. This program is often referred to as aid in attendance. That is the highest level in the VA system. And so that's what a lot of people shoot for, but there are 3 tiers that we will talk about a little bit later. There is also an aid and attendance tack on to the compensation side, but it's only like $300 or $400. It's not like a big giant increase in the disability comp side. So I always kind of want people to understand that up front. What we're talking about is somebody needs long-term care. How is there any additional funding for it? And that's where this benefit comes into play. It's also important to know that this benefit will not cover the full cost of care. Under the VA comp side, if you're 70% or more disabled, there is like a long-term care benefit side of things where they will pay for either the VA nursing home, or if you are like if our facilities are super busy, obviously, because we're in one of the highest military populations in the country, they will privately pay for the care that you receive in another nursing home. And so I always feel like that's important to preface for the veterans is there's still long-term care benefits, even on the comp side, 70% or higher, you've got a lot there. All right, so unlike the compensation program where it doesn't matter really about like how many days you served and what's your income, what's your assets, all this other kind of stuff, this is a needs-based benefit. And so the criteria is much more expansive. I always tell people that for most of the criteria, I can't do much about it, right? So the first of the criteria are that you had to serve 90 days active duty, 1 day of which was during a period of war. And those periods of war are defined by the VA. So notice number 1, 90 consecutive days, only one of which has to be wartime, but it has to be active duty service. And so around here locally, obviously, I do get reservists. I do get National Guard. There are no benefits. There's not a similar benefit structure for them unless they serve 90 days active duty. So obviously, you either have the service requirement or you don't. I can't do anything about that, right? I can't fix it. One of the most important things for you and your family to know, if you know that, hey, this might be something that you're eligible for, is to get your DD-214. You don't want to know how many times I have to fight to get a DD-214. There are a couple DD-214s, and trust me, photocopy them, like do whatever you need to, have 100 of them sitting on a stack. I don't care, but really we need to be able to get to this as soon as possible. There is an issue where one of the VA record keeping facilities caught on fire. And so there are missing DD-214s that are very hard to obtain. So if you do not have your DD-214, please get it. Don't, put it, it's a pain in the neck. You're going to know more about your service periods and where you were and everything else than what your kids are. And so just get it, make sure you've got 100 copies, and that'll be great. All right. The other thing is the veteran must have been other than dishonorably discharged. So if you have a dishonorable discharge, you, just like anything else in the VA system, you're not entitled to anything. So those are going to be service requirements. Then we had a medical needs test. Okay. And so they define things a little bit different. And you have to be 65 years of age, permanently and totally disabled, a patient in a nursing home for long-term care because you're disabled, or receiving Social Security disability insurance or supplemental security income. So this is like a kind of like a medical test, right? Like, is there some need, like just because you're 20 years old, you're not going to be able to get this. There's got to be some sort of care requirement there. Age 65 is there because there is a presumption of disability reaching age 65. And for those of you who have heard me present before, that is not the first time you have heard that, because it mirrors the Medicaid system as well. And then on top of that, you have to meet the countable asset criteria that's been established by the Department of the VA, which we will get into. And there's an income test. I can do something about the assets, just so you're aware. That's the stuff where I step in and I can help. But the income test, essentially, what they're going to be looking at is, does your income fall below the medical expense? And what happens is that they're only going to pay this out based on what your income is. And so when we get into the max rates, what they're going to say is, let's say your benefit amounts $2,000 a month. If you meet all this, but you don't have necessarily out-of-pocket care, but you're over age 65, there are some benefits that will kick in, and they can say, okay, well, your income's only $1,500, so we'll give you the $500 difference between the $2,000 benefit you'd be able to qualify for, because it's the difference between your income and the benefit. In most cases, though, what's happening is that we need this for care. We need to get the most amount of money possible. And so from an income perspective, the medical expenses get deducted from the income, which is why you can get your full max benefit if your income doesn't cover all of your medical expenses. That's where you get all of this. I have a lot of clients who ask, or, they try and put in the application, they try and get the benefits before they're incurring medical costs. What you hear me saying is that is a deduction, right? Your medical expenses are a deduction. And so in a lot of scenarios, they cannot get benefits until they're actually incurring medical costs. All right. There is a surviving spouse benefit, and the issue is that they had to have been married to the veteran for at least 1 year or have a child with the veteran. They have to have been residing with the veteran unless separation was due to medical or military reasons. And there's also like minor or disabled child provisions, but those are, I don't get those near, and actually I can think of one time in the 12 years I've been working on this stuff that's ever happened. It's important to note that divorce creates a period of ineligibility, or, it creates an ineligibility, and it's a surviving spouse benefit. So if the veteran is still alive, it's the veteran that needs to qualify. It's not the spouse that's going to qualify. So we've got to have a death of the veteran, divorce severs that. There is a small time period, and I have to pull it every single time, where it is eligible, but it's like where a divorce wouldn't necessarily impact things. But I've had one case in all of my years where that's worked as well. So that's just like an exception that was built in. All right. So when we're talking about periods of war, these are what the VA defines as a period of wartime. So very, very defined periods. Vietnam is always my trickiest of the time periods, because what you'll notice there is that there is one time period where you had to be physically present in Vietnam. And then there's another where if you served outside the Republic of Vietnam. Recently, there's been some changes to the physical presence test, in terms of for the Navy, you might not have been boots on ground, but you were off the shore of Vietnam, technically still in international waters, whatever. And so they've kind of relaxed that a little bit in order to get some eligibility there. So those are your wartime periods. All right, so I said we were going to get into the asset stuff. So we've gone through and actually I want to skip, or I'm going to wait on assets real quick. So the medical needs test, we talked about the age 65, permanent total disability. The VA is very different than the Medicaid system in that there is a cushier definition where I can get this stuff turned on. And usually this benefit works really well whenever there is some sort of cognitive issue, or if I have somebody with a really high income and we're going into assisted living. So if you heard me present before on the Medicaid system, you have to be skilled nursing level of care, meaning you need assistance with at least 3 out of 6 of your activities of daily living. So physically feeding yourself, bathing yourself, dressing, going to the bathroom, walking, and transferring. In the VA system, there's an ADL test, but it's 2 out of the 6. If you're in some sort of facility setting, there is an automatic, yes, you qualify for benefits, and that includes assisted living. Or you have to have some sort of protection to protect you against the hazards of society. So if you have advanced cognitive impairment, for instance, and you need somebody there because you're going to burn the house down, or you're a wander risk or something like that, that will also help trigger on this benefit. Whereas in the Medicaid arena, that cognitive side is completely irrelevant. They do not care until it gets to the point where you physically just can't feed yourself, bathe yourself, dress, go to the bathroom, walk, and transfer. They're not going to give you anything. What this also means is in the Medicaid system, you have 2 benefits. You've got in-home care. Technically, there's an assisted living benefit, but the income threshold is so low that it's sometimes just not feasible to use it. And secondarily, even if you do qualify for the benefit, for you meet eligibility criteria, assisted livings don't want it. And it's a dollars and cents reason. I mean, if you're getting paid 1,800 or even under PACE about, I think 3,800. I don't work on that side. I don't work on the billings, but I know kind of what they've told me in the past. Or you can get privately paid at $8,000 a month. Which one do you want? You're going to want that higher pay, and they have not suffered as a result of saying, hey, we're not going to take this. So they're not in any dire strait to accept the Medicaid benefit that we do have here in the system. And then you've got nursing home. In the VA, they cover in-home care, they cover assisted living, and they cover nursing home. So you can kind of use the benefit wherever. So that's always important, I think, whenever we talk about the medical needs test and where can you use this benefit. All right, so the asset criteria, up until about, I think it was 2018, they had a very flexible standard. There was no look back period. It was very laissez-faire. We as elder law attorneys loved it because we could preserve a lot of assets. Then they decided to put a hard and fast net worth limit in. So now what we see is what's the market value of all assets and income. So they include income into the calculation of assets. Now, mind you, you get to subtract income if there's medical expenses, so that's good. So a lot of my clients, the income doesn't really count for anything. You do get to take the value of any encumbrances. So like if, let's say you have a second car, because the house is exempt, the first car is exempt, but a second car would not be exempt. But you just bought the car, and so you've got, the car's worth $60,000 and the loan on the car is $58,000, and the value of that asset's only $2,000. So that is important for people to understand. Based off of this year, and the VA runs from December to November, not a regular calendar year. And so this year you can have $155,356, and you can qualify for the VA benefit. A lot of times advanced planning is required in order for me to protect much inside the VA arena. So first of all, like there's now a 3-year look back period where you have to claim on the application subject to penalty of perjury. So I always tell people, don't lie about this stuff. Doesn't get you anywhere. Did you gift any money away? And if you did, that's going to create a period of ineligibility. Now, where a lot of planning comes into place is related to the house. And so the policy specifically states that primary residence plus 3 acres is excluded from the net worth calculation. What that also means is that I'm allowed to gift that house without any kind of repercussions for my clients because it's not considered an asset. There is always this presumption that a family member is going to return back to the home under some sort of, condition. So a lot of the planning that we as elder law attorneys do is we move the house into an irrevocable trust so that we've kind of put a shell on it. I always tell people that because these trusts become figurative, right? People trying to think of what do they actually do. And so I use an M&M analogy where I basically say, like, everybody wants what's inside of an M&M, right? The peanut butter, the pretzel, whatever. And the candy shell is really just designed to prevent it from melting out all over the place, right? We don't eat the M&M because we want that candy shell. We eat because we want what's inside of it. Similar thing with regards to these either Medicaid compliant or VA compliant trusts. We want to make sure that whatever we put in there that the VA cannot look at. So why do we protect the house? Why do we move the house? It's excluded, right? You can continue to own it and VA is not going to say anything. Well, number one, VA is only paying a certain dollar amount. And as care needs increase, maybe we do need to look at Medicaid. So we want to kind of get it moved and start that 5-year look back period for Medicaid. But number two, a lot of times the house is going to get sold. And so if we move the house inside of a trust, when the house is sold, the VA can't look at the money. If the house stays in your name, the VA can look at the money and say that counts against that $155,000. So that's why we do it. And we don't just give away the house to your kids because that prohibits 2 different tax issues that we have. The first one being what's called your Section 121 exclusion, which is if it was your primary residence, you can exclude $250,000 worth of capital gains. The second one being the step up in basis. So let's say that you inherited the house from your parents. It was worth
Hello.
Do what? No. So let's say that it was worth $10,000 when you inherited it, and now it's worth $200,000. if you try to sell that property, yeah, it was yours, it was your residence, so you get to take $250,000 capital gain exclusion, but your kids, it's not their primary residence, so they don't get that. And instead, they have to pay capital gains on the difference between the 10,000 and the 200,000. So 190,000 would be subject to the capital gains tax. If we wait to vest the interest down to them, they will get a step up in basis at your death. So if it's worth 200,000 at your death, they sell it for 200,000. There's no capital gains tax exposure. So a lot of times I get people that come into my office, hey, I want to add my kids to my deed. I want to give the house away. I want to, you know, they do all this stuff. They want to do all this stuff to protect the house. And I always have to take a step back. Is that really what you want? Here are the tax consequences, you know, and then talk about the trust piece. So when you hear me, there are times where I just will refuse to do the deed for various reasons. And so just so you know that when you're dealing with a true elder law attorney, there may be kickback on just gifting real estate for tax purposes. All right, so we've gone through the service test, the medical needs test, and then we've also gone now through the asset test for the VA benefit. These are your pension rates, and there's a couple different ones, but I pull out kind of the ones that I see most often in terms of what I do. There are actually 3 levels of pension. You have the basic one, which I just say is like your low income pension. So if you remember, whenever I said that there was a benefit, let's say the benefit amount was $2,000 a month, your income was only $1,500, but you meet those other criteria, they'll say, okay, well, you just have low income, so I'm going to give you that extra $500 a month. I'll tell you the basic pension amount is not that high. I think it's like $800 a month, somewhere around there. But that is what I can use in the event of a spouse needs care, because what I can do is essentially family income would go towards the cost of care. We would apply for the benefit, and then the spouse has about $800 to live off of. Combined with the assets, it's sometimes doable, but unfortunately, that's not normally a realistic benefit for a lot of my clients. So just so you know, that one's usually tossed out the window. You then have your housebound pension, which is the middle level tier, which basically says that you're confined to your house. So you might not be able to get down the stairs, you might not be able to drive, you can't, you know, basically you're stuck and confined. That's your middle tier. And then the holy grail of the pension program is our aid and attendance pension. And so here on this, and Steph, I will actually email this to you so that if you want, you can send it around. But if you notice, it talks about what are the actual criterias. Number 1, you're unable to dress or keep yourself clean and presentable and attend to the wants of nature, or you have a physical or mental impairment that requires assistance on a regular basis to protect the claimant from daily environmental hazards. And so that's where you get into that cognitive piece, you get into the physical piece, much more wide open standard. These are kind of the most common rates, and the VA rate, like when you go to the VA website, there's a couple different levels of the pension. They will tell you what the basic amount is, what your housebound rate is, but they always give it to you in the annual dollar figures. My clients really need to know what the monthly amount is because they're trying to budget for that cost of care. So if you're a veteran, you have no spouse, you have no dependent children, you're looking about $2,300 a month. If you're a veteran and you do have that spouse or a dependent child, you're looking at about $2,700 a month. If you are the surviving spouse and you obviously your spouse is no longer around if you're surviving, and you don't have any dependent children, you're looking at about $1,500 a month. That's usually what I'm getting for the surviving spouse. Or if you're a surviving spouse with one dependent, you're going to be looking at about $1,800 per month. So if you've had to shop around for the cost of care, in-home care is running anywhere between $30 to $35. We can pay children under the VA system, which is nice. And so we can enter into care agreements, get a geriatric care manager involved. And that's one way to kind of sort the cost of care without the family necessarily like becoming impoverished while we're waiting for its benefit to turn on. And so that's one thing that we can do that's a little bit unique in the VA system is just pay kids for the care they're providing. That is income to them, so it's taxable. So what you hear me saying is you can do private pay. Everybody always thinks that that's the better route to go. And I know if you've heard me present on this before, this is probably one of the biggest things that I get into. The IRS has specifically said that household employees are employees. They are not independent contractors. which means if you can find a private caregiver saying, hey, by the way, that's 15, like I'm only going to charge you $15 an hour as opposed to the $30 an hour. They're your employee. They are not a 1099 contractor. You now have to withhold for Medicare, you know, the FICA and all that other kind of stuff. And so, and you've got to pay for half of whatever that is. Whereas if they're under self-employment, they have to pay for the full 15%. So that tacks on to the cost. And now you're running a payroll. You've got to do reports for unemployment, all this other kind of stuff. And so number one, it's very burdensome for the family sometimes. And number two, it does add on additional costs. So I always tell my families, like, you're not saving all that much and you're going into a big headache whenever we are going into just the private pay. There's in the VA, we can't pay under the table because, by the way, we've got to deduct this out. We've got to show them that you're paying for care. And so that's important for you guys to understand. So $30 to $35 an hour is kind of where we're at. And it skyrocketed about $10 an hour as a result of COVID. There are some assisted living facilities I know that are as low as $3,500 a month. But then it can go up to $12,000 to $15,000 a month. So depending on what your income is and this benefit, it helps, but this is not going to cover 100% of what we need. Nursing home runs anywhere between like 8 to 12, kind of depending on where you're at. So, you know, this benefit's I think the biggest thing to understand is it's available to help, but is not going to fully cover what you're going to need long-term. It's often a bridge gap. For me, I do it a lot more when I have somebody with cognitive impairment. We just need to maybe get a couple of hours inside the home to be able to make sure that they're eating properly or whatever. Or we've gone into assisted living. Assisted living, I think, is where you do get your biggest bang for your buck in this, because you can use income, you can use some of the assets, but you can also get this benefit to try and help supplement the cost of care. Usually by the time we get nursing home level of care, we're talking about Medicaid. All right, Steph, are there any questions?
There are. One asked, can a surviving spouse receive this only if they qualify as well as opted for the survivor's benefit program?
No, so the SBP, which is the military retirement system, is completely and separate apart from all of this. So that was just, you're still their spouse legally, right? The difference is that just like any other 401k, IRA, whatever, a spouse has certain rights. One of which is to have that survivor benefit plan amount where you're entitled to 55% of the military retirement. And if you have elected, and a lot of times it's people don't want to pay for the cost of that. So what you have done is you have waived away your right to the retirement plan. You did not waive away your right to TRICARE. You did not waive your right to military retirement and event of divorce. You do not waive away your right under this program.
Okay, perfect. And then we had another question about where do you go to access these benefits if not going through a lawyer?
Wait, can you repeat it?
Sure. The question was, is where can you go to access these benefits if you do not use a lawyer or an elder law?
Okay, so I believe highly in using the Veteran Service Organization. There is the Norfolk branch is my favorite. So if you do a Google search for the Veteran Service Organization or VSO, they will pop up for you. Just so you all know, it is actually a federal offense to charge to submit an application for VA benefits. So when clients come to me, I'm not charging them to submit an application. I am charging for planning. So a lot of times it's that trust that goes inside of the house, or the house that goes inside of the trust. Sorry, it's been a long week, as you guys can probably tell. And so it doesn't really matter where you go, but I do want to always arm people. It is illegal to charge for a VA application. Appeals you can charge for, and then the planning around it. There are certain organizations out there, like Patriot Angels, that I have heard that they have charged for the submission of the application. They're not lawyers, so they're not allowed to do the planning. And I've gotten them, they've done some really bad plans for some of my clients in the past that actually violated terms of like of powers of attorney, stuff like that. You do have just your regular like DAV as well. They are normally more concentrated on compensation than pension. So usually my recommendation is go to the Veteran Service Organization locally. The Norfolk one has always been my favorite. They have worked the best with my clients. And I don't know, they're just great. They do have I have a checklist that I normally give. So even if somebody has come to me for a consultation, I normally give the checklist so that you have everything that you need when you go to the VA or the VSO. And I think that the way they get paid because the Department of Veterans Affairs pays for them to do this work. So that's my recommendation. But if you need to plan because you're not where you're at from an asset level, then it's usually through attorneys because other organizations don't necessarily have the requisites to be doing the planning.
Okay, excellent. We had one other question before too. They asked about the look back period. I don't think they heard you say. Did you say earlier it was 3 years?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I'm also just now seeing about the slowdown. Stephanie will tell you that unfortunately that I'm a northerner and that is probably my worst habit. So if you guys do need me to go back over something, do not hesitate to ask. I will not take offense. That is the northerner in me. I was just in Boston and I felt at home because everybody talks so fast.
And I told them we're recording this, so anybody is welcome to go back and look at it. We'll probably have it up on our website, senioradvocate.live, sometime next week. So, and we have one other question for you, Shannon. How much do you charge for veteran planning, veterans benefits planning, the average cost? And I guess that's more, what is a cost to charge for an estate plan? Because it's the same thing.
Yeah, and so usually for long-term care planning, it's going to depend on what are your assets, what benefits are we looking at? Are we looking, at both? Do you have any estate planning documents? Do we need to update them? So average cost is probably going to run anywhere between 5,000 to upwards of 25,000. That 25,000 though, just so you know, is families want me to handhold for 5 years while we're getting through the look back period. I do have some families where they just say, nope, we're going to get in a trust. We're not going to use you at all during that period. We know that it's waiting and we'll come to you if we need you later. So it's a big giant range, but minimum cost is 5,000, max cost is 25,000.
Okay, excellent. I think that is it for the questions so far. I'm not sure if you have anything else. This has been very interesting and very enlightening. I think a lot of people don't understand what the difference is, how to even start the planning process. So this has been great.
Good. So I don't really have this is a very narrow, so usually I'm trying to fit in so much, I think, within a short period of time. So this is such a narrow topic. And of course, I'm not getting into the healthcare benefits and all the other kind of stuff. So this one was a little bit quicker.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Shannon. We appreciate it. Such great information. Next month, Shannon will be presenting on, I've been named the executor trustee, now what? So sign back up for that. So now we get to the winners. So let's start with the gift certificate from Amazon. This is from, of course, TimeWise Concierge. And the winner for that is Carol Avenson. And Carol will be mailing that to you. We also have a nice Olive Garden gift certificate from Heritage Oaks. The winner of that is Dave Farich, and again, we'll be mailing that. And then last but not least, we have the free assessment with Shannon, valued at $350. The winner is Jackie Peters, and Jackie will be in touch with you about that. Thank you again, Shannon. We appreciate it. We'll look forward to next month and hearing more from you. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great day. Bye-bye.